All right, so I'm here with Darragh, Wae, and Craig, and we got together because the idea we were talking about, we're kind of gonna focus around beauty and the emphasis on beauty. If there's that going on in society right now, if there's a need for something like that to happen. Um, the question came up when it was a recent conversation me and Craig were in, and we had mentioned it seems like we're coming out culturally of a where we had previously focused on something like I don't know if it was truth, because there's usually these three values that are named, like goodness, beauty, and truth, that are at least named in I don't know if it's Catholic circles, I'm not sure, because I'm not, maybe Eastern Orthodox as well.
Right.
And it seemed like there was this pursuit of, like, with scientific discoveries, almost like a pursuit of truth. And now it seems like we're kind of shifting into something else where it might be. And I've noticed people have mentioning beauty a lot more, and I didn't know if, and we none of us maybe have all the knowledge on this, but I didn't know if there was some sort of maybe astrological significance to that as well, if there's like a reason for that, if that's a good thing, I don't know. So there's just all these questions. I thought we could maybe dig into this topic, see what you guys think. Anybody have any thoughts?
It's a really interesting question, and I think it's tied in with a lot of things, like a lot of other things. You know, um, why is something beautiful? Like, why do we have an emotional or physical reaction to an object, a place, a thing? That it presents in a certain way that is somehow so pleasing to look at that we have a physical reaction to it. I've been thinking about this since we've been chatting about it, Jason, and thinking about what do I find beautiful, um, and I was also kind of like, what do I find beautiful that doesn't have kind of weird secondary connotations to it, you know, like and then I kind of started to think about, well, thinking about landscape, beautiful landscapes, or you know animals that I find just beautiful to look at, and I kind of realized that. But for me, anyway, I think beauty is fundamentally attached to meaning. Does something have meaning or not? You know, um, and I think that's quite important. Because going back to your kind of opening um, positioning of this, of why are we kind of moving back into this space where we feel we're questioning the absence of beauty, going, why is that a good thing or a bad thing? Why, it's presenting itself more. um I think it's more to do with the absence of meaning, in that we've explored um materialism. um I would say to some degree we've gone as far as we can with it, but maybe there are new depths that can be plunged, that can be reached in it. But I think that's what it is. I think it's attached to meaning. You can buy a beautiful object. you know I'm a sucker for kind of those first edition pretty hardback books. I'm like, just take my money. Like, it's an object, it's a pretty object, and I love it. you know but why do I like it? It's a collection of pieces of leather. It's a collection of words on a page. Why does it have? Why do I think of it as beautiful? Because it has some sort of meaning for me. You know, I don't know. That were kind of my initial thoughts on it. I think looking at nature is important when we talk about beauty. Otherwise we kind of end up in these kind of conversations about European cathedrals. You know, and that gets attached to ideas like, well, the state or church demonstrating its power by showing something beautiful that makes people relate them to that kind of sense of godliness and meaning. So I thought we'd
Yeah.
circumnavigate that and talk about nature.
Yeah. I I I mean I love that. I love talking about nature. We were in our last discussion too, we have a mutual friend, Luke Johnston, and he mentions that where he's a Christian, but right now I think he said he's not
Yeah.
going to church. But he says he finds when he feels closest to God is actually in his garden. And I'm
Mm,
like, that's the green chapel. Like when I feel closest to God is when there's this
yeah.
tree farm I go to and I'll walk and I'll pray and things like that. And there's just
Yeah.
moments where it feels like, yeah, there's these holy moments where you're like, man, this is but then sometimes I'm like, I wonder if that is a personal thing, because I find most beauty in nature. And I know there are other people who um like we have a friend, Alex, me and Craig know our friend, and I remember driving, it was on our way to go to Craig's bachelor party, and we were coming up to, where was it, Houston? It was some city in Texas, and Alex just loved the skyscrapers and loved these buildings, and I was sitting there like, what, like, really?
Mhm.
But I don't know, so like I kind of wonder if that's a thing too, if other people just find beauty in different things, or
Oh yeah. I mean, they
yeah.
totally do. Totally
Mhm.
do. Like, I mean, like sometimes when I'm like in London, like the skyline's amazing.
Mm.
They got all the kind of modern skyscrapers, against all the kind of in
Yeah.
the imperial buildings and what have you. Like it's amazing to see. It's a spectacle. But then again, we get into the position where you're going, but is that magnificence
Mm.
rather than beauty, or are the lines blurred? You know.
Ah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because me, I always like the ancient ruins. I'm like when
Oh yeah,
the buildings look beautiful to me once the
yeah.
trees are creeping back up the cobblestones and stuff. But I'm like, I don't know if that's just my personal bias. But yeah,
Yeah, I
I
mean, well, it's that wonderful thing about London is that like you can look at the skyline and you can just see,
mm,
literally a thousand years of buildings,
yeah,
and go down to the Thames foreshore, and people pulling out Roman era stuff and like pre-Roman Celtic stuff out of the Thames foreshore, where it's amazing.
I
Yeah.
love that you attach meaning to it as well, though, because I think that's
Mm,
extremely important and very
mm,
insightful.
mm,
You know, one thing I'm curious about is taking a survey of everybody in the room to see how we approach these things differently or model them differently. And I don't know that we're going to crack the riddle here on this call, but I'm just curious to see
mhm,
maybe how you'd respond to a question. These three, I've heard people call them the three normativities or the three transcendentals. I'm not sure what you guys call them, but beauty, goodness, truth. Do you imagine that these things are something that are, let's say that their existence is completely subjective? It's something that is only in the mind, so to speak. And, or I've heard other people who will say, no, they're objective. They're out there independently of us. Even if there was no one to perceive them, they would
mm,
be there. And I've heard another category who will say, no, there's something, let's say that they'll use the words transjective.
mhm,
It's, they actually aren't in the world and they aren't in you. They're actually only in this between thing, this collision between you and the world. And so it's as if like if they wouldn't actually be there in the world if you weren't there, and it wouldn't be in you if the world wasn't there. So maybe that's a silly question. Let me know. I'm curious how you would answer that, or if you think that's an inappropriate framing.
Well, I don't know if it's an inappropriate framing. I think uh, uh, it's a really interesting question. It's a big question. Um, like you get into kind of really deep philosophical waters there. Philosophical waters with that, because I think about things like what does goodness mean? Because I don't think that's an innate feature. Like it's not something that is kind of roundly defined. It like it doesn't come inherently baked in as a definition of what does goodness mean. We have obviously kind of, we got like the Ten Commandments as a list of, which inherently like are like, don't do these things, right? This is a list of stuff you should not do, right? And that's had a level of cultural influence that is, just immense. An immense level of cultural influence. It's the foundation of most Western thinking, right? But it comes from this small area of the Middle East. That particular concept, those concepts that came out of Christianity, and there's similar concepts in Islam and Judaism. But is that subject to that area? Does that mean goodness the world over? I don't think it does. Like, and it's very hard to break your head out of that, because I innately associate like goodness with very similar adherence to the Ten Commandments. It's very hard not to, but like, for example, the thief that steals is not a good person to the person he's robbing from, but to his family, or maybe to who he's providing for, assuming he or she is providing for somebody, he is seen as good. He's taking an immense risk. He's putting his own freedom potentially on the line to provide for his family. And that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is made some terrible life choices to put himself and his family in that position that he would then do something like that. So it does seem to come down all the way to just pure subjectivity. It's very hard.
I agree with that. Say, how do you decide what is good if it's going to be based on every person's degree as well, what they think is going to be good, and what they're willing to sacrifice of themselves in order to be good is on a scale too, right? So I might be looked at as too good if I give too much to those in need, right? And so then does that goodness then become a weakness because giving too much and not keeping it in, and then does that take away too much from my family, so
Yeah.
It's a scale and perspective, and it probably can only be quantified by the person experiencing it in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. At that point, I start to think of, well, is goodness defined by ourselves and our own conscience? Like, it's such a mind bender, this, isn't it? It really is. Because like, if your conscience is telling you, right, that was bad, you shouldn't have done that. You can't rest with it. You're haunted by something. But equally, how much is that down to social conditioning of you thinking something is good or bad? Like, it's very different. You look around the world, what's acceptable, or what does society? Yeah. What does society shrug its shoulders at? Varies wildly.
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about before you arrived. We were talking about Lilith and how she's kind of turned into a negative feminine.
You're a little bit hard to hear, Wae. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So we were talking about Lilith and how she's been kind of turned into that demonized feminine figure. Yeah. But based on whose interpretation, right? Because she chose sovereignty, she's evil.
Yeah.
Whose interpretation is that, right? And that's been constructed and defined by the society that wants her to be that way. So it's kind of that same interpretation. Is she evil because she has sovereignty, or is sovereignty itself evil?
Yeah.
And then does knowing yourself, does that quantitate some sort of, I don't know.
Yeah, it is. It's very challenging, and I think when I reflect on these kinds of questions, it is very. It's very easy to get then to that minefield, right? Where you're like, well, I can't tell whether I'm coming or going. What came first, the chicken or the egg? We end up in these scenarios where you're just in a bind, But equally, if you do something horrendous to somebody, you should be able to figure out that's pretty, that's a shitty thing to do, and I'm not going to scratch your chin philosophizing about it, it's still difficult. But I think this it's separating those two, isn't it? There's the philosophy and then there's the human experience. But we need one to interpret the other and kind of pull the threads and see where we get to. But I think the big thing for me when we talk about beauty is the way it makes me feel. If I experience something beautiful, that I feel it, that I'm not analyzing it and then making a response. I'm having a precognitive response. It's a pre-verbal response to something, and I think that's quite significant. Where I'm not sure I'd have the same with truth.
Truth and beauty aren't the same.
Yeah.
They can share the same space, but they aren't.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a question, maybe kind of going off. I feel like, Craig, you always just elevate it to this level where it's like got me thinking way out here now. I'd be interested in asking you guys this. Is there a point with all of those, goodness, truth, and beauty, where they, gosh, I don't necessarily want to say become tyrannical, but there's when I think of beauty, a lot of times sometimes I'll think of Snow White, the movie, just the Disney movie, and it's like there's this the wicked queen or whatever, the evil lady, and it has this obsession with beauty where she's going to kill there's this other figure that's more beautiful than her, and she wants more beauty. So I don't know if there's this way where an overemphasis on beautiful could become evil in a way. I don't really know the right way I'm getting at, and that's why I feel like it's important that you corrected it to meaning, because there's this way where it's like I don't necessarily get to determine what's beautiful.
I think bringing up a fairy tale is a really, really good way to look at it. There's so much this it's such rich territory for exploring the human experience and pondering these big questions. So you've got the evil stepmother and or is it the evil queen? Yeah, and then you've got Snow White. Right, so you kind of we think about the meaning. What is the queen doing? She's looking at her own reflection in a mirror, asking who's the most beautiful, right? She's the definition of skin deep, because she can't see any other value past her own physical appearance. You think about everything she has. She's a wealthy woman. She's the queen. But if her reflection doesn't give her what she wants, which is, her own, clearly her sense of self is totally wrapped up in her appearance and her being kind of the apex of feminine beauty in the kingdom, right? So she's clearly a deeply fragile person. but also very powerful, and is immensely threatened by Snow White. And Snow White, we've obviously got her name is telling you more about her beauty. She's Snow White. She's innocent. She's virginal. It's like there's a purity to her, not just in a sexual sense, but in her perception of the world. Like everything is she's giving off this kind of like this almost childlike loveliness, or that kind of innocence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically counterweighing the two. What's of more value to somebody? What do they find more beautiful? You've got wealthy, powerful queen, who is beautiful, but she's innately corrupt, versus the youthful beauty, but is innately pure. And the mirror tells her the truth. The mirror's reflecting to her, telling her the truth. That doesn't go well.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a huge amount to that. I mean, I absolutely love the trying to unpack those fairy tales. Go, what's happening? What's going on? Because you get these massive mysteries in there. You have these huge symbolic tales, and they're archetypes for a reason. They're telling us an awful lot about our nature and about the nature of reality. So, yeah, I think that's a really, really good way of looking at it. Okay.
You also have to look at too. She's the older woman, right? Become obsessed with beauty.
Yeah.
She can't see the beauty in growing old or becoming wise.
Yeah.
She's only preoccupied with the surface and the purity of the younger female that's coming in to ultimately replace her.
Yeah.
Right? And so then do we say that preoccupation of her mind solely on the aspect of beauty, that becomes something negative as opposed to experiencing something positive?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's exactly it. And this is where we're thinking about where the beauty has no meaning. For her, it's well, that's not necessarily the right way of phrasing it, but her beauty gives her a sense of meaning, the queen that is. And when she feels that it's waning and there is somebody more beautiful than her, she reacts in a way that is completely murderous. And bearing in mind, like, the reaction is so psychotic that, like, it's like she sets out to poison and murder her husband's daughter because she's jealous of her beauty. Like,
yeah,
that's a pretty psychotic thing to do. That's next level crazy. But why? And it's entirely wrapped up with the fact that her identity, everything about her, irrespective of all her achievements, bearing in mind she's the queen, she's a wealthy woman, she's a powerful woman, her whole sense of being, of meaning, is wrapped up in her physical appearance. There's nothing else before, and that's where we get to the whole thing where beauty's only skin deep.
But then is she in that position because that's the way society experience? Her only value is her beauty, right? Because that was what was constructed to her in terms of what is expected. So, let's say she just took it to the extreme, right? Her reaction was extreme.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
How much of that reaction would she have had if society had treated beauty differently?
Well, that's what I think this ties in. I was going to try to tie in. I don't know, because when you're talking about the fairy tale, if you zoom out and apply it, more on a macro scale or something, it seems like there's this level of, seems like what you guys are also getting at is there's this level of humility that has to go along with it. And so what is like beauty can fade, or it has the capability. Like you said, she's the older one, and so what she deems as beautiful, or what has been told to her that is beautiful could change, or it could be this or that. And so it's kind of, I don't know, I guess that's why I like that you brought up that it's associated with meaning, because like I could walk outside and see a bird's nest with some dead birds in it, and for some reason I could find that beautiful, and other people might think that's horrifying or something, but it's because I'm finding meaning in it or something. So I feel like there's maybe this level of humility where it takes a humility to try to almost see the beauty in everything or something like that.
Yeah. I think it's worth examining other stories, where we got similar things, because I think look at the myth of Narcissus. Falls in love with his own reflection, and he just stays there, right, looking at his own reflection. It tells us a lot as well. If you get hung up on certain things, then you miss the rest of your life as well. So it's like, but again, that's what has meaning. That's what has meaning to him, is his own beauty.
Yeah, that goes back to the immortal concerns are more important than mortal.
Yeah.
And I think if you recognize that, then you inherently can take that step back and start to go, oh, maybe I'm too preoccupied on myself. Yeah. But then that's some sort of wisdom that you gain somewhere. So, and if you're so focused on your beauty and yourself that you can't step back and recognize that that's what you're doing, then I guess that's where beauty can be bad or too alluring, maybe.
I mean, it's so challenging though. It's. I mean, we're bouncing about the place here a bit, but I mean, it's my fault mainly. But it's one of those things that we all strive to some degree. I mean, I've already I make kind of annual. Right, this is what I'm going to do this year. This is my goal, and I tend to give myself things that I think I can't do are going to be really hard to do, and what I've really realized are the only things that I can't really do are ones that require discipline around exercise. They're the only things that I can't consistently do. I can write books, I can read vast amounts of information, I can do all kinds of stuff, but the ones that I can't consistently do are can you build up a consistent habit of going to the gym or doing whatever it is to get yourself in a physical space that you want to be in, and no, can't do it. So it's one of those ones where I've just boiled down all my goals. Right, sod everything else. Right, we're just doing this. That's all we're doing now. Next year, nothing else. And it's you look at that, and it's well, that's your drive, right? People think about this stuff all the time. It's very hard. It's very hard to kind of unpack, why. It's well, it means something. It means something to me. What was the original question again?
Great. Yeah, we've drifted off here.
Yeah, Craig, you threw in this hand grenade and then just walked off.
This objective, subjective, transjective question here. Yeah.
Well, I can say what's coming to mind during the discussion. As we talk about these fairy tales, it's bizarre that we tell fairy tales. And the Snow White story, we talked about how perhaps beauty was important, but it's less important, let's say, than another value or a different value, like values of maturity or graciousness. let's say, but like all the stories have this structure where they say this is good, but here's when it fails, when it's you know, but it's not as important as this, and it's as if we're kind of adjusting this leaderboard of our values, you know, trying to, and you know, and if we have a story where the leaderboard, let's say, or the values, the structure suggested by the story doesn't match our own feelings, we say it's a shitty story, you know, and that, you know, well, I'll stop there. What do you?
Well, yeah, I think that's a really interesting reflection. That's making me think about what, and it's something as well you said, Wae, is that one of the problems with Snow White is the Queen doesn't see the value she has at that stage of her life. She's still maintaining and attaching value to a different stage of a person's life. You know, you look at our society, we tend to do that a lot as well. You know, we almost attach all beauty and all value to youth, you know, and we don't think about the later stages of value. And you from a pagan perspective, the goddess tends to be triptych, where she's the virgin, she's the mother, she's the crone. It's the same goddess, but she presents in 3 different ways. They all have 3 different strengths, 3 different weaknesses, different areas that they have dominion over, but they represent the different stages of our lives. You know, and we don't really do that. We don't really think about what's the value of our seniors. You know, like we tend to really just think about the generational differences, rather than kind of, okay, well, what can older people offer, you know, in terms of their wisdom and the stage they're at in life. It's always this kind of like fetishization of youth, you know.
Yeah.
And as a middle-aged man, I'm frankly, I've had enough of it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up too. Right before we got on this call, I was talking to my grandmother because she just came in last night. She told me, she said, you know, every day I look in the mirror and I'm like, I look older than, and she was like, well, that makes sense because I've never been this old before. But she was saying how that if there was one thing she could get rid of, it was her wrinkles. And I was like, don't say that. Like, I don't know. I love wrinkles. Like, I think they're amazing, and they just have, there's so much beauty in them because there is so much meaning as well. But yeah, there is this weird, and I think some of the reason she might feel that way too is because, like Wae was saying, there's this kind of like emphasis or pressure put on it where wrinkles are not perceived as beautiful.
Yeah.
In a broader scale throughout culture, but they're extremely, gosh, like, I mean, they're related to wisdom as well. They're related to just all this stuff. And I love that you brought up the goddess too. That's one thing that's definitely lost. I mean, for sure in Christianity, because we don't really have that. But I love the what is it? The maiden mother crone, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
In the 3 stages. And there's beauty in all 3 of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. You know, it's you know, I'm the father of 2 boys. I was lucky enough to be raised by my mother and my father, but I understand now as a dad and a partner, you know, I look upon what my partner does as a mum, like with real reverence, you know, not just as being a son, where I've been lucky enough to be, you know, cherished by somebody above all else, you know, and that mother's love, which I honestly don't think I'm hesitant to think of anything more powerful, you know, more absolute. Not obviously not universally, but you know, but and then seeing it with my own children. And this is the stage of life thing where you change, you know. So and even kind of talking about my own relationship with my partner, she moved from being, you know, that woman that I found beautiful, that I was attracted to, in that stage of being kind of, you know, the maiden, right? And then becomes a mother, and you see this new well of strength, of ferocity, you know, to protect her children and push them forward. It's an amazing thing, you know, and but again, when we think about beauty, it's wrapped up. We get stuck in the kind of female late adolescence or early 20s. We miss all this other stuff. So it's, yeah, we have this is the problem with thinking about physical beauty, you know. We miss an awful lot of other things. And I think it really goes back to what you were saying, Wae, about like perhaps that the Queen didn't have that transition, or felt she lost, you know, a lot as she got older.
I'll speak to, I just had a picture taken of myself at a work event, and my hair was so gray, and, you know, like I had one of these moments where I went and I chopped my hair off and put hair dye, because even though I am in this phase, I am transitioning. My body's at this point where I know I'm in this final transition from the mother to the crone. And I found myself, I just want to be at the crone stage already. I don't want to feel this transition. I don't want to watch everything fade away and change in front of me. And you know, so the ego side was very much up and running the topping of the hair and all that stuff. But at the same time, I could step back and go, these are the last moments where I get to kind of maybe pull back some of that maiden energy just a few more times before I can't, you know, and I'm just the old lady with the nose ring in and you know, pink hair. So you know, I feel exactly kind of what she was going to, but I didn't let it possess me to stand it, right?
Yeah, that's a rhythm.
And I let it, I still was able to take a look back and see the crone is coming and go, well, this is not so much fun, but it's not so bad. But, you know, and I think that's where it comes into our internal struggle, right? The only person who was going to bring that balance into how I was reacting is me. And I recognized the knee-jerk ego, and then took a step back. Like, well, you know, I get it. I'm getting old. You know, my hair is silver. Accept these aspects, you know. And then Ronan saw me with a little makeup on and was like, "You're pretty," and it was like, that's what I needed to hear. That my son thinks I'm pretty, you know, not that I fit into some standard of beauty that society wanted me to be in. You know, he doesn't care that my hair is, but I still have that knee jerk, like, oh my God, look at me. So
yeah, it's our roles change, don't they? You know, I have a similar experience, and I joke about this a lot, where I kind of in the job I was in a couple of years ago, and there was lots of young women working in the same company, and it was around Christmas time, and they were all kind of, oh, we should do kind of like a you know, Christmas party and kind of get everyone together, and then thought it was a great idea. They're like, oh yeah, we could get Darragh dressed up as Santa Claus, right? You know, and they all thought this was you know, great idea. I didn't perceive it like that at all, because what I perceived it as, this is the nail in the coffin for me as being attractive to young women, right? I know that's over. That's because they see me as Santa Claus, has been explicitly told. That's exactly what's happened here, you know. So I'm like, I am not dressing fucking Santa Claus, all right? Excuse my language, Wae. You know, because that's how I read it, and it was one of those things that it's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's kind of just part of life. And also, you know, it's my role has changed. You know, I'm a dad. I've a family to look after. You know, that's my purpose. Like it's just you get a shift in what you do, like different stages. I don't what's the equivalent of the maiden, mother, crone in the male one. I don't know what the male one is really.
Santa's the last
The
stage.
dad,
I guess.
the boy dad.
You guys
You know?
could
Boy
be
dad
dads
Santa.
all through.
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, yeah, that's that shift in it. Like, you know, it stings, but it's like you were saying, Way. It's your reaction to it.
Yeah, you let it consume you, or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a good 24 hours swallowing. I didn't let it take out the rest of my holiday season.
Yeah, I remember telling my brother and him just dying laughing. He'd be like, ah.
Like that brings me to somebody posted some sexy Santa. So now he's definitely over 50. So I'll have to find it to make you feel better.
Thank you. That's very, very kind of you.
Sexy Santa. Oh man.
Do you have
That's
another
really-
question?
No, I was just thinking that was really interesting. You're talking about the transitional stage when like the petal's kind of falling off the flower before the next one comes or something. You know, that is hard to go through. Or you said, why can't I just be the crone already? You know, or when you're kind of having to be in that weird space. It's almost like another form of puberty or something, right? Like I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, it's a decline. It's a decline, basically. You know, like here, there's this whole thing like when you're 40, you go in for a checkup. You know, and like the language changes. You know, it's kind of like that kind of just happens now.
Yeah.
You know, it's not so much right. This is what you do to get back, spring back. Like no, that's you got to get used to that now.
Well, when I was
goes,
pregnant with him, I was in 30. I was 36, so I was labeled a geriatric pregnancy.
No.
You know what it feels like to be
Really?
called geriatric in your 30s? I mean, like, but that's the term for
insane.
older pregnancies is geriatric pregnancy.
Wow.
Right?
That's bonkers.
That's one way to make a girl feel really special.
Oh.
So yeah.
But that's what a crazy term.
Yeah.
They need a different.
Yeah.
They need a different piece of terminology.
Somebody kinder needs to redefine an older woman's pregnancy.
Yeah, we should come up with a term. Craig, you got one? Since you've been there so quiet, give us a term.
I don't want any blood on my hands here.
I can tell.
You won't make anybody happy, I promise.
I have another question. I don't know about what you guys might think about this. So it seems like even with times just seems to be moving faster now too. Like you're talking about, you go in and all the languages change. Like things are just changing even faster. Do you think that could be like a weird blessing in disguise? Where, because I mean, I mentioned this the other day, even with terms of like the way people dress, different fashion styles. It seems like maybe just because of the internet, it seems like especially people younger than me, like they could look like they're from the 80s one day, and then the next day they're dressed like they're from the 40s or something. And it's like everything's kind of flooding back in, but it's weirdly all appreciated and all kind of so I didn't even know if there was a way, even with age, like the way time is moving so fast, that people are able to appreciate it more, see it more clearly because of the way information has kind of opened up too, to where people can see the beauty in things they couldn't before because they get to see it from all different angles. Or if it's more, because sometimes it feels terrifying, but then other times I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of beautiful, getting to see all these things kind of come together in this weird. Now I'll drop the grenade and back away. Just kidding.
I don't know. Like I don't really know any young people. To be honest. Like, speaking frankly, like and I live in quite a rural area, so I think the fashionable young people try and leave as quickly as possible. As until they get to the next stage of life and realize this is a lovely place to live. But I mean, but the time speeding up thing, I've definitely experienced that. It just seems to be hurtling along, but I mean, talking about kind of like ideas around beauty and what you appreciate. I mean, certainly I appreciate simpler things as I've gotten older. I appreciate a lot. I mean, you get a bit older, you've had a few kickings, right? You life dishes it out. Like so you've had a few kicks in the teeth. So you see things in a different way when you get through that kind of stuff. What's your expectation of success? Expectation of happiness. My version of success is vastly different now to what it was, say, 10 years ago. It's worlds apart from what it was 20 years ago. Like the idea of, look, again, and it comes back to kind of the ideas of beauty and youth. We live in a society that fetishizes, a certain age bracket, what it represents, like on very high standards of physical beauty. Now, I mean, that's changed somewhat. I personally think on a performative level, I think it's changed somewhat, but we still fetishize, absolute beauty. So young people grow up and they go, well, I want that. That's what I want. I want to be admired and loved and adored, and everybody think I'm amazing and beautiful and magnificent. And yet, you hear people give their accounts who have, on a surface level, experienced all those things, and they're generally living lives of quiet desperation. It's very, that's a very performative thing. It seems to be, in a deeper level, a very challenging, very difficult existence. You've got lovely baubles, and you might have kind of financial strength, or you get to have an interesting life, traveling the world, all that kind of stuff. But does it have meaning? Does it have depth?
Yeah.
And I worked in like the advertising industry for a long time, and it doesn't have any meaning. Lots of money floating around. Like people say there's no such thing as a free lunch. I worked in advertising. It's loads of free lunches. But like they don't, doesn't have meaning. Like, and you can see
that free lunch cost your soul.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of exposure too, right? Right now with technology that never existed. Even I'll separate Darragh and I as the older two in the room, right? They weren't there when we were growing up, right? So we tended to, I think, clump into our safety zones and our friend groups a little bit more. Didn't have the variety of options that these kids do. So they can go, I want to look like I'm from the 40s. And tomorrow I'm going to be the gothic vampire. And the day after that, I'm going to be, some kid from the streets that really loves whatever, right? Like they have those options that there's no restrictions in changing their masks as they see fit. Whereas I think our generation at least felt like, well, you're a skater, you're this, you're that, you fit into this group, we don't cross over, we don't blend, we don't share concepts and ideas, like we retain our identity through our appearance. And now I think we're finding appearance and identity is more fluid than it used. Is that good? Probably. Is it bad? Probably in some ways too. I suspect we're probably losing some things. We're also maybe gaining more flexibility in how we look at ourselves, or at least these next generations of kids on how they look at themselves. Maybe they won't experience as much. If we can all age gracefully and show them a good crone period, then maybe when they hit that phase, they won't suffer the way we did, right? That's what the ancestors we're laying the path work for how they are supposed to perceive themselves in the future. So it's up to us to stop being so vain. Question mark. That's what I'm thinking.
You got a question, Craig? I thought you had a question. We just changed his headphones, I guess. So you had mentioned earlier on, nature as well, and really finding beauty in nature. Do you think there's a shift back in that in society, or do you think that might just be a personal thing as well? I feel like I've kind of witnessed a movement towards those things, but I don't know.
I honestly don't know. You know, I don't know if it's a societal thing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think the problem of meaning is big.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people feel hollowed out by modernity. You know, that goes back to that kind of thing of like, you know, do I want to be a famous person who has wealth and glamour and all those kind of things, and then most likely, like, people find out it's got no meaning, it's hollow, it's empty, it's vacuous.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, and I say that in a way that going, like, you know, I'm not saying that money doesn't make things easier. It clearly does. You know, like, but it's, you know, we're not talking about that. We're talking about meaning. You know, and you know, I don't think it does. One of the things when we talk about these platforms, that, you know, that like the different social media platforms and stuff, like, they worry me when I think about meaning. Principally because I look at them and I go, well, how much do these platforms create the environment where we start to value things like our personal validation as human beings is dependent on stranger hitting like on something I do? You know, that to me is very troublesome, because it externalizes all, you know, it externalizes and randomizes your validation as a human being, really through the lens of an algorithm that doesn't have your interests at heart. The algorithm doesn't care whether you feel validated as a human being, whether you're good, whether you're you know, whether you're good, whether you're truthful, you know, or what your view of beauty is. It doesn't care. It wants your engagement, it wants your focus, and it'll feed whatever it needs to feed you to get you to do that. That's the tool. It's what it's designed to do. It's just doing what it's designed to do. You know, but if you are somebody who finds your validation through interacting through that platform, I don't think it's going to end well. You know, and that maybe, you know, I feel bad. That could be the what that cumulative effect is, or maybe something more, you know, challenging. But I think that's a very hard thing to grow up with. You know, it's something that, as a middle-aged man, I've only been really around that stuff for 12, 15 years, or however long it is, you know. But like, to me, if I was a teenager experiencing this world now, and exactly as Wae described, we've got, you know, really cliques that have really regimented rules. Like when you're a teenager, it's about fitting in, right? It's not about your differentiation. It's about how you are part of a gang of some description, part of a clan, part of a group. You know, when you get a bit older and more comfortable in yourself, then it's, you know, you kind of want to express yourself as an individual. You know, and like social media is a hell of a crucible for that to happen in.
I don't envy this generation. Crazy.
Yeah. I don't know if we've kind of strayed off topic in terms of YouTube. We've gone in kind of a number of different directions.
I'm sorry about that. That's probably my fault. I do that
I think it is your fault, Jason. Yeah, I think it is your fault. Yeah.
I'm always like, let's just hit record and see where this goes.
I've got a question.
See what happens.
I don't know if it's going to help our problem, but the question I'll pose is to Wae and Darragh, you've both, it seems like you've had a kind of, let's call it a magical baptism in a way that has set you through a transition that I haven't experienced. I'm curious how your experience or your relationship with, let's call it magic, has colored your understanding of meaning.
Set another grenade.
Do you want to go first, Wae?
No, you can go because I feel like I kind of answered that a little bit. So you can get.
Yeah. Well, it's given me meaning where I didn't have any, really. Like I've never really been comfortable in the material world. That's a really silly sentence. I've never felt comfortable with kind of like how we perceive value and meaning in a very material sense, you know. I still did everything I was supposed to do, you know. I went to uni, I've had a career, I've worked, you know, I've worked all my life, but it always left me feeling empty, you know, and without meaning, because you end up kind of living from paycheck to paycheck. Your aspirations are tied up in the acquisition of things, you know, be it wealth, be it a home, doing what you're supposed to do since you were directed as a child, you know. My spiritual my magical awakening has been going on for donkey's years, really. Well, hit a kind of a supernova point. But what it's given me is an enchanted world. You know, a world full of meaning, a world full of magic. You know, a world that is alive in the absolute sense. You know, and when I look at a landscape, when I see beauty, I see it in through that kind of lens of enchantment. You know, I see something timeless. I'm aware of my place in it, that I'm just the latest human being to be walking through this through tens of thousands of years, all the life there, and it's it's deeply, deeply special to me. So it was utterly transformative, and I'm hugely grateful for it, you know. But that's not to say that it was easy. It wasn't. You know, you get put through the ringer. You know, like it is that whole thing of like, you're gonna face some terrifying shit. Like stuff turns up. in a fashion that you will not expect it. And you'll have some like viscerally terrifying experiences because your concept of reality has to crack. And that breaking, that cracking, generally requires something with the energy and capability to punch through it. To take you from a position where, I don't really believe in anything to, well, I think fairies are real. That takes quite a lot.
Yeah.
That's a serious shift in how you perceive reality in the world. And that's going to take a lot of momentum, a lot of energy, and something seismic to move you in that kind of your ontological view of the world changes that significantly.
That's our plucking your eye out, turning yourself upside down.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you say plucking your eye out, like
yeah,
like Odin's eye? Yeah.
But I agree with it. I would say too that it gave me enchantment, right? It had got to a place where I was very cynical about religion at all. I would still say I was kind of witchy, but I was not happy with the things I was seeing around me. I didn't even like some of the stuff coming out of the New Age community. It was very isolating. But then when I kind of started this journey and began listening on my own and following my own threads, then there was a whole lot more that opened up. And yeah, reality does shift. If you can't handle change, this isn't the game for you, right? Because you have to be able to walk through this process, or you won't. You'll either run back to what's familiar and what doesn't scare you, or you turn and you face it and you just walk straight into it, right? And that's kind of what I did. And it's interesting because I've been a Spirit Box patron forever, and Darragh did that interview with Elise, and I found Elise through him, and then I've been in her magic and her tarot group, and my whole experience is expanded, and part of it's just through following the threads I found Darragh, and I've kept doing that, right? So, but in that process, I have found meaning where I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And there were truths that rang true that I had never experienced that had more meaning than what was even just kind of like, this is reality as we have constructed it in this world, and this is what it is, and these are the things you will experience. And when you find that that's not what's happening,
Yeah.
That's why I like say approach it with scientific method, like if then what happens now, So becoming in tune with the land spirits and, spending a year dedicating my practice to them, when the cat escapes and the wild cat that I feed brings her home within 30 minutes, part of me is like, yeah, land spirits and I are good now, right?
Yeah.
So now can I transition some of my energy into a new mode of experiencing the sacred? So what am I going to do now, right?
Yeah.
I've gained that trust, but if I walk around telling everybody that I've gained the trust of the spirits of the land and they're my friends, and I talk to the crows and the hawks, they're going to look at me like I'm absolutely bonkers, right? So it's isolating in that sense too, because you don't have a community to fall back on. You don't have a church of people who are like, yeah, I saw a fairy, in the woods last night, right? There isn't that. And so and in that solitary practice, I think too, there's kind of a strength and an understanding that will kind of come come into because we're not. Oh, he's coming.
He needs a new fast tickle.
I think I think what Wae's described is just bang on, you know. Like that experience of, as I said, like talking to crows and thinking the world is alive, like in a real sense, you know, not just something you say metaphorically. You're like, no, I think the stones and trees are conscious, just in a different way to us. But if you listen, and if you've got the capability and they want to talk to you, you will hear stuff. You know, and I say that exactly in the same, you know, feeling as Wae described it. You're going like, that sounds fucking nuts. I'm so sorry, Wae. My apologies.
He can't hear you. Don't worry.
Yeah, thank you. That it sounds bonkers, you know, but that's what you're experiencing. That's what you're experiencing, and it's hugely hard to quantify. You know, beyond that, when you start to have that, like, kind of traditional witch experience, more stuff happens. You start to, your consciousness will get absorbed into an animal. You'd experience what it's like to be a bird, you know, or a fox, or a wolf, or a hare. Like, in a way that it's so visceral, it's immensely hard to impart how real that experience is, you know. But this is the nature of this kind of calling, this kind of, and I do mean calling, you know. It is not for everyone. It's witchcraft. Like, and I'm, you know, I'm parroting people who said that to me, you know, who've kind of helped mentor me through this. But it fundamentally changes your outlook in a way that's immensely hard to impart, because it's quite an isolationary experience, you know, and it is visceral. That the thing about this, when we say kind of like nature is alive, and fundamentally, I believe, really what's happening when you're getting that transformation into, I mean, it just depends where you are in the world, right? You know, shaman, witch, whatever, you know, it's hearing the land, it's hearing the landscape, it's hearing nature. You're talking to the consciousness of nature in its most magical form. But nature, that's not a twee thing, you know. That's not like, oh, let's frolic, you know, let's frolic in the pastures. How wonderful nature is. Nature is violent. Nature feeds on itself. It's brutal. It's wonderful. You know, you think about what happens to an animal in its life. How many documentaries have we all watched? You know, where you see the kind of the gazelle getting taken down by the predatory big cat. You know, that's nature, and that's what it manifests as. You know, when you're having that mystical experience, it's all those things. It's the fecundity of the passion and desire to procreate, then the instinct to feed, to hunt. You know, all of these things are parts of nature, and they'll express themselves to you in a way that is extraordinary, you know, and it's beyond language in so many ways, you know. So that's kind of what it's, you know, what it's given to me. But I would imagine like a Christian ecstatic is similar in certain ways, You know, like somebody's having a profound experience. It's not. I mean, look, Aquinas. So wrote all these vast books describing, you know, a lot of chin stroking. What's the nature of God? You know, all these different philosophical issues. And I mean, I'm saying this from memory, so you know, I could be completely wrong, but like at the end, he was saying mass, and he hears a voice saying, "Thomas, you've spoken well of me. What do you wish?" It says, "Only to be with you, O Lord." Right. And then he never writes another word. Never again. Nothing. Because there's no point. There's no need. Everybody has to get there themselves. You know, that's a beautiful thing. Oh, look at that! Handed you the closer. Handed you the closer, Jason.
All right. Yeah, we can end it there if you want. That is good. That is a good note to end it on. The beauty, the re-enchantment of the world really does beautify it.
Yeah. I'm not sure we talked about beauty or answered any of those questions. But we had a grand chat anyway.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
I
think it was a beautiful conversation.
Yeah. Completely agree with you guys. That was really good. It's a lot to think about. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Hopefully we can do it again soon too.
Yeah, cool. Right, I'm gonna have a.
Oh, do you want to plug anything too, if you'd like, your Patreon or your podcast as well?
Yeah, I'm terrible about this stuff.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I forgot last time, and I just like ended it, and I was like, "Oh no!" So I'm like, man. So
I'm the worst marketeer in
You're in advertising. What are you?
I know. Yeah, I think I find it so repugnant that I'm like, I do podcast.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a listen.
He has a great podcast. I'm a patron.
Yeah.
So
very kind of you.
Thank you. There you go.
Thank you, Wae. Thank you. What Wae said.
Yeah. Spirit Box Podcast Patreon. Is it and the Patreon website is linked to all that.
I think it's all there. I think if you Google Spirit Box, you'll get a very famous band called Spirit Box.
Okay.
But I might be on page 3. If you do Spirit Box Podcast, you might find me.
Can I ask you another question before we go to that?
Is
directly related to that. I heard that. What does that term actually mean? Because I know that's a term used for something. Spirit Box.
Spirit Box. Yeah, it's a device. It's a kind of like a paranormal ghost hunter's device to try and hear the voices. There's a thing called like EVP, right? It's electronic voice phenomenon, where people used to notice that if they hit record on an electric device in an area where there was a haunting, sometimes they'd hear these kind of mumbled words that get picked up on electronic recording device.
Okay.
So Spirit Box is a kind of extrapolation of that.
I think I saw this on Hellier when I watched that show or something. I think that.
Yeah, they used Spirit Boxes, or they used them.
That's where I think. Okay.
I can't remember what it's called. That kind of the method where they listen to random radio. That's the one. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I'm also a patron of them. So.
Very good.
Nice.
Great stuff. Yeah. But yeah, that's where it came through, because the whole podcast was trying to understand. Yeah, how spirits, folklore, and magic kind of interface.
Yeah. I remember you were saying that you like hearing other people's strange stories and things like that. So we've got a few weird ones around here. We need to introduce you to Luke Johnson. I think he's got some weird ones too. He's got some strange experiences. Yeah. He's a really nice guy. He's good. He's a fun guy.
Yeah.
It's a good one for time.
Yeah. He's one of those people you meet him and then you're like, I feel like I grew up with you my whole life or something. That's the experience I had. I was like, were we best friends growing up? What happened here? Yeah. Well, anyways, thank you guys again so much. Thanks for letting me take up so much of your time. And
no problem.
Super fun. So yeah.
Cool.
Well, I'll share
Thanks for the invite.
All right. I'll
All right, everybody.